Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Chit Chat with Cass. So it has been a few weeks. Thought I would give everyone some time. I thought I would go ahead and talk about Avengers Endgame. The spoiler ban has been lifted, but just in case, I do want you guys to know that this episode will have all the spoilers. So if you have not seen the movie yet, please shut this podcast off, go see the movie, and then come back and listen, because I have no interest in ruining a movie for anyone. So, spoiler warning. So this was a pretty big movie, right? It was a big movie for fans, for comic lovers, and just in general for like a movie experience. It was a pretty big film. So I figured maybe you guys would want to hear some of my thoughts on the movie. Because there are so many details, I decided to go with a podcast episode instead of just a normal kind of review video that I sometimes do on this channel. Also, I have only seen this movie one time, so please forgive me if I forget things or if it's a little bit out of order. I'm really making this outline from memory, so bear with me. It was 3 hours long. A lot to take in 3 hours, like 3 freaking hours. Holy shit. I think I used to think it was crazy when people would go and see long movies in theater. Like I remember when like the Lord of the Rings movies came out, and I thought that that was crazy. But here I am, just casually going to a 3-hour long comic book movie. And by some miracle, I earned the badge of not going to the bathroom during the entire movie. Go me! So let's go ahead and dive into it. This is your last warning. This episode will contain spoilers. So I think that this film starts out a little slow, but it was necessary for the buildup of the storyline in this specific Avengers movie. You're handling the direct events from Infinity War and then continuing on with and into the Endgame story. So the slow buildup actually worked for me. In some cases, when that happens in movies, it can be very boring to me, but for this, when I felt like it was kind of a slower build-up, it worked because it was like growing and growing and growing and worked for this movie. So we start at the point where the heroes have failed. You know, this is not like a positive outcome. The bad guy has won, and in turn, you know, like half the people, creatures, all of the shabam are gone. So that's a pretty depressing start to the movie, especially when you see Hawkeye with his family. So on one of the last trailers, they showed a clip of what looked like Hawkeye practicing a bow and arrow with his daughter. And I called it. I was like, God damn it. They are going to poof away his family right in front of him. And look what they did. That's exactly what they did. And it was horrible. I mean, he's just having a nice day, you know, out there teaching his daughter, you know, to how to become the next generation of Hawkeye. Having a picnic with his family, and then poof, they disappear. Like, dark, tug at the heartstrings way to start a film. But it immediately took us back to what had happened at the end of Infinity War, because so many people poofed, there were so many emotions, and I think that was a great way to start with Hawkeye's family disappearing, because it took us right back to that. So Tony and Nebula are stuck in space, like we had seen in the trailers as well. Tony mentions that they are running low on oxygen and food, and he is basically recording a final message for Pepper, in case by some chance, like, someone finds the ship and maybe she can see it. If Pepper is even still alive, because Tony has no idea if she was part of the people that disappeared. But before Tony can fall asleep and drift away, Captain Marvel shows up and saves him. So I actually only recently saw Captain Marvel. I essentially only saw it, like, I'm really picky about what movies I've been seeing in theaters lately, so I decided to see Captain Marvel last minute just to be ready for Endgame. I actually saw Captain Marvel the day that Endgame came out, so the theater wasn't too packed because everybody was in a different theater for a different Marvel movie. I assume that Captain Marvel's end credit scene of showing up on Earth and asking what happened to Fury happened shortly, like, before the rescue of Tony and Nebula. Like, that's kind of how I paced it in my mind. You know, the Avengers maybe, like, are likely asking her if she could go help and find their friend that's stuck on a spaceship somewhere. So that's kind of how I paced it. I'm not sure if that's accurate. Just how my mind put it together. So arriving back on Earth, Tony is pretty beat up. His stab wound did heal with Nebula's help, but he looks rough. You know, it's been a little rough for him. And at this point, he is really bitter, especially towards Steve. There is still a lot of tension between Steve and Tony at this point. You know, they're both dealing with the fact that the Avengers failed. The Avengers failed a lot of people, and they're both handling it in very different ways. Pepper does meet him there at the Avengers base or house, headquarters, whatever you want to call it. So I am glad that she didn't poof away. I do not know the correct term for what everybody did in Infinity Wars. I say that they all poofed away. That could be inaccurate, but that's what I'm saying. But yes, Pepper did not poof. I am a fan of Pepper Potts. I know that some people do not care for her in these films, but I am a fan. So then comes the time to go after Thanos. They decide to go to the planet that he's on, and they are able to track a signature, and, you know, Nebula pretty much knows exactly where he is. Like, can you think about how many times he told her his plan, like, over and over? You know, she knows where he is. So the idea is to, you know, go and kill Thanos, get the stones, and unsnap everyone, and set things right. So the Avengers set out into space. Tony, of course, is staying behind. He's actually, you know, he's not doing too hot, and he needs to be sedated at one point because he's so upset about their failure. I believe it's Rocket at one point that asks, who hasn't been in space, or something like that, and, like, some of them raise their arms as they're on the ship. Black Widow, Captain America, you know, the rest of the gang or whatever. This movie does a really good job at having laughs or smiles, but also having emotions, fan nostalgia, and a successful story. So it hits on a lot of different points that I think they captured in a successful way. Captain Marvel does head down first to check the planets and reports back that he is just, you know, by himself in that garden of sorts. And when we see him, he is pretty burnt up. You know, he's got, like, burnt marks up the side of him. Kind of screwed up, right? He kind of looks like the Jaws 2 shark. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? He just kind of looks a little crispy, okay? He's all burnt up on one side. He's not looking too hot. So they go in, like, all, like, strong, like, they're gonna take Thanos down, big boom, all that stuff. But the plan is immediately ruined because the signature that they tracked was actually Thanos destroying the stones. So you can't unsnap everyone without the damn stones. And he tries to talk to Nebula, blah, 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 and bam, Thor cuts his fucking head off. And you know what? I don't really blame him. Like, you do you, dude. Like, wow, he went for the head there, like, he did it, and I loved it. Like, screw you, Thanos. But also, as I'm watching it, I was very curious, because I was like, okay, so the stones are gone, and Thanos is dead, he's decapitated. Who exactly is going to be the villain for the remainder of this movie? Is it just going to be, like, a different story arc with not necessarily a villain, but a motivation for them? I was very curious on how the movie was going to progress after we chopped Thanos' head off. And then we go 5 years later. I was not expecting that type of a time jump. You know, maybe a year or something to show, like, the people reacting to all of their loved ones disappearing. But nope, 5 years later. It's going to be very interesting for future Marvel movies as well, after, like, the Snap Marvel movies. Everyone's been saying, like, you know, post-Snap. I think that is what everyone is calling it. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with timeline stuff. So let's see, Captain America is running a support group. I mean, kind of like Falcon was doing, like, when we first met the character in Winter Soldier. Steve is still trying to just help people, even if it's in a smaller way. Black Widow is basically running what's left of the Avengers. She is at the headquarters and touching base with the other leaders around, you know, the galaxy, different planets. You have, like, Okoye in Wakanda, you have Rhodey, Rocket, Captain Marvel. Everyone is trying to help in different ways, and not all of that help is on Earth, obviously. And, you know, you get to see some more emotional Natasha in this scene. The failure is hitting everyone differently. And so, in her case, instead of seeing the tough spy, she does let her guard down a bit, especially when Steve comes into the scene. And I'm really a fan of their friendship, Cap and Black Widow. I liked how it kind of grew in Winter Soldier, and even the movies since then. I'm a fan of their friendship. And, you know, he's kind of there for her emotional moment, and even the thoughts about Hawkeye most likely being this assassin that they are getting reports on. You know, he's kind of gone all Malcolm Merlin motherfucker, killing different gangs and whatnot. Sorry, I slipped into DC there, sorry. But she has all this information that is most likely her friend doing these things. So she's got a lot going on. And then we see the van in the storage or whatever, and can we just say that the rat that accidentally let Scott out of the quantum realm is the real hero of this story? Like, come on. This movie really starts to pick up when Scott gets out of the van. So we owe it to that rat. He gets everything moving in the right direction. Which I'm so glad we got to Scott, because the end of Ant-Man and Wasp, like, killed me. Like, fuck. He just chilling in the damn quantum realm, and then all of his peeps disappear, and there's no one to let him out. That is so screwed up. And, you know, I like Scott. I think Scott is a great character. So he has no idea what's going on. The neighborhoods are kind of trashed. He's not sure what's happened. And then he finds the memorial for all of those lost. And this was a really touching and hard moment, but also one of my favorites. These sequences with Scott here, like, he finds his name. So now he realizes that to the rest of the world, they believe he disappeared during that time. But then you switch to his, like, desperation to find Cassie's name on the memorial. He's desperately trying to find his daughter's name, and it's touching and it's emotional. And I mean, can you imagine not knowing if your loved one was alive or not and trying to find their name on, like, a statue memorial like that? It's very, like, touching and very well done. It's probably one of my favorite moments, one of my favorite smaller moments in this movie, and his performance is really good in it as well. And so after that, he basically, you know, he's going to her home and he finds her. And that's when it really hits that it's been 5 years. Like, she's a damn teenager now. She's not the little girl that we saw in Ant-Man and then Ant-Man and Wasp. She's a teenager now. And so it's like, oh my gosh, I'm relieved that you're alive, but holy shit, you're a teenager and I've missed 5 years. And in turn, Cassie's point of view, seeing him after he supposedly, like, poofed away. She thought her dad was gone. Like, all of the emotions, I just really enjoyed these moments with Scott escaping and then finding Cassie and all of those bits. And did anybody else, like, see the random cameo from Ken Jeong? He's, like, a comedian. He's, like, from, I always go to the Hangover movies and some other ones, but he's, like, the random security guard that's in the storage place where the van was. Like, just, like, such a random cameo. He must be a Marvel fan. So from there, Scott goes to the Avengers headquarters, and that's kind of the scene that we saw in a lot of the trailers where he's trying to get their attention on, like, the security cams. And he gets their attention, lets them in, and from there, I feel like is where we really start to form the plan of how we're going to fix things, how the Avengers are going to work together to fix what Thanos has done. He is, of course, talking about, like, the quantum realm and how time moves differently there, and that could be the key to fixing things. I know that a lot of people for this movie thought that they would use the time stone, but when I saw Ant-Man and Wasp, and they mentioned, like, the time holes or whatever that they had briefly mentioned when he was going to go into the quantum realm, or even when, you know, her mom, Hope's mom, was in there, they just mentioned little key points in that started making me believe that that is what they would do in this movie, and they wouldn't use the time stone. And I guess I was kind of right in that prediction. They also mention and reference, like, every time travel movie out there, which I think is really funny, because I love real life references or, like, pop culture references, you know. I got that reference. So then becomes the plan of, like, stealing the stones in time, I guess, you know, before Thanos got to them. Now, being as I've seen many shows, movies, etc. with time travel and how time travel logic, like, kind of changes depending on what you are watching, I do enjoy their version of time travel and kind of the rules, I guess you could say. I didn't have any problems with it. They then think to the smartest person they know who can help them do this, who can help them complete time travel to get the stones, and that, of course, is Tony. So Tony is living in a lovely log cabin out in the wilderness with his daughter. My heart melted when we got the introduction of Morgan Stark. So sweet and cute. So I was just very excited when, like, they introduced that little girl. And have we noticed that Marvel has really been about, like, father-daughter stuff, like, for a little bit, like, for the films. Like, you have Scott and Cassie's relationship. Now you have Tony and Morgan. Even, like, Hawkeye with his oldest daughter at the beginning there. There's just been lots of, like, references of father-daughter moments. And you do have, like, little bits of maybe, like, father-son, maybe, like, if you think of, like, Howard and Tony, maybe. But I was just thinking of, like, the Avengers and their kids. There's lots of father-daughter relationships that they've done in these films. And, hell, I'd love to hear about some other couples having little badass daughters in this universe, like their mom, but, we'll get to that ship of mine later. So Tony is a happy family man with Pepper and Morgan living kind of away from it all, They are living in a post-Snap world, but when you look at it, it didn't affect them just as their little family, Like, Pepper and Tony got married, and they had a baby, and so they're still living, like, a somewhat happy life away from everything. And Tony doesn't want to screw that up, which you can see where he's coming from, definitely. You have this family now, you're doing well, why would you want to potentially screw that up? But Tony, being Tony, does end up working on it that night, and it also includes some really adorable scenes between him and his daughter that I just think are very heart melting, or whatever you want to say, and he basically figures it out. Then comes the conversation with Pepper on if he should do anything about it. Like, yes, he's figured this out, he knows time travel now, but should he act on it? Should he risk what they have, their home, their life, their family? Should he risk all of it to help the Avengers maybe get back all the people that disappeared? Which I think is a really great conversation and kind of shows you bits of what type of hero Tony is. And for this movie, Tony is very much in a place where he didn't have to do this because, Pepper didn't disappear. His daughter didn't disappear. He knew people that disappeared, but it didn't, closely affect him like some of these people. And so maybe he didn't have to help. Maybe he could have just lived out his happy life. But it, once again, kind of shows the type of hero that Tony is. And that's a big arc for his character in this movie. And I just enjoy this whole conversation with him and Pepper because I do think that Pepper knows Tony better than anyone. And, that's been the case since the first Iron Man film. So after being rejected by Tony, the Avengers, or whatever is left of them, I guess you could say, go to see Bruce instead. Because he's also a smart guy, He's pretty good. He's very sciencey. And he is a combo of Hulk and Bruce. He looks like the Hulk, but he has more of Bruce's mind. It's a great combo of them both working together instead of fighting. And I really loved this. I also love how Hulk looks. You can see Mark Ruffalo in that CGI so well. It makes me really believe that he is there in those scenes with real people. They do such a good job with the special effects. I swear to God, if only they could teach DC their ways, because, it's just really good. And Hulk is, so happy in his, new combined self. He's, taking selfies with kids. And from there, we are trying to assemble what is left of the Avengers. So, Black Widow goes for Hawkeye. She is literally probably the only person that he would talk to at this point. He's lost everybody else. That's another thing that I really like about these movies, and this movie too, how Marvel has created friendships. Like I mentioned, Steve and Natasha, I love their friendship. I also really like her friendship with Clint. They are able to be friends without having to make it be a love interest, if that makes sense. In some series or some movies, it's everything is pushed to be a love triangle. Everything is pushed to be a love interest or a relationship. With a lot of these Marvel movies, it's more about friendship, and especially these Avengers who now consider each other like family. So I like seeing these different friendships. They are able to be friends without making it all about the love interest. And I'm all for, couples that you ship or couples that you are fans of. And I am a fan of different couples within the Marvel world, but not every guy and girl that share a scene together need to be a love interest when Avengers as a whole, as I said, have kind of become a family. So that's just kind of my side note there. I do enjoy Clint and Natasha's friendship. So she gets Clint. Tony does come back and gives Steve the shield. Thank you much. Thank you, Tony. Cap needs a shield. We also have them going to get Thor in New Asgard, which is basically like a little fishing community, like a little small town. And thank you for showing Valkyrie. I was very concerned with what happened to Valkyrie. You show her in Ragnarok, and she was epic and fantastic, and then we have no idea what happened to her when Thanos attacked the ship at the beginning of Infinity War. I was a little concerned there, so thank you for showing her. I'm glad she's alive and well. So, once they find Thor, things have changed a bit, and a lot of people are calling this part of the movie extremely risky. They basically made Thor depressed, anxious, with PTSD, whatever you want to call it. He stays at home playing video games, he's gained weight, he drinks all the time. He is not the regular Thor character that you think of when you think to these movies. And it changes his character from what fans are used to. However, I love this. I think this is a great story arc for a hero character, and that kind of brings some real life feelings and struggles into a movie. And now, since the movie has been released, I've seen like several posts and different either memes or statuses, posts, whatever on social media. It basically is showing Thor in Endgame getting the hammer, and it says, "Your depression does not make you less worthy." And I think that's beautiful. I just think that this is an amazing thing that they did for this character. And I guess maybe it is risky. I don't know if people aren't a fan of this. I am, for sure. The reviews that I've watched or listened to, they have been fans of this story arc for Thor as well. So I guess it just kind of depends. I am very much involved in mental health discussions. I have bad anxiety myself. I make relaxation videos for people, okay? So it's something that is always on my mind. So showing off a hero character with some PTSD, with some depression, is amazing to me. And I would like to think this shows others that their superhero role models can go through shit times as well, but at the end of the day, they can still be worthy and still be a hero. I think that's an incredible story arc. So we're kind of bringing everybody together, and then it's like kind of time to, we need to test out the time travel. And it ends up being Clint that will test it. He's already pretty much done with life, doesn't think he has much to live for, so he goes for it. And he does make it back to his home and is able to call out his daughter's name and even return with the baseball mitt, showing them that it does in fact work going through time, and he's able to bring something back with him. So they are using the Pym particles as part of their time travel gadgets, and they only have so many of them left. Basically, like, only a certain amount of jumps through time. So they have to be careful with how much they're using or where they're going. They have to plan it out. So they do have to be careful with that and how they use them. And even Scott accidentally uses one at one point, which is a funny scene, but it's like, oh my god, focus, man. You only have so many of those left. So this is where the teams are starting to separate and go to their different locations and times to gather the stones. I know they mentioned a few time travel movies, but I did want to say they did not mention the movie Timeline, which I enjoy. Anyway, the time travel portal thing that they are all standing on that they build looks very similar to Timeline, by the way. Check it out. So it starts the missions to get the time stones from the different points in time. There are certain things I really enjoy about time travel plots, and this movie gave me a few of those, which makes some of these parts favorites to me. Running into old family members, seeing yourself from an old moment, having more future information than the people around you, all of which can be very comical or heartfelt depending on how the scene is written. And of course, you get the nostalgia if you are a fan of these movies. So first up is New York at the time of the first Avengers movie. We got Steve, Tony, and Scott going for the Space Stone, aka the Tesseract, and the Mind Stone, which is in Loki's scepter. We also have Hulk in a different part of New York trying to get the Time Stone from the Ancient One. I believe that's her name, sorry. I have actually only seen Doctor Strange once. I need to watch it again. So that is the New York mission. So starting with the Tesseract and the Scepter, while they are going after these, you get so many awesome callbacks to the first Avengers movie, which is such a good movie, like really showed how to do a huge group movie, set the course for the rest of these. I love it, and I still love that movie today. So they take a great movie like that, but we get to see different angles or scenes we aren't familiar with, different points of view, like added little bits. I love stuff like that in time travel. Like, for instance, like, I love the moments when, like, Tony and Steve are watching Loki sitting on the steps, asking for a drink from the end of the battle in the first Avengers while the Avengers are standing in front of him. It's funny to see the Avengers insist that Hulk take the stairs instead of the elevator with them. You know, it's just like little added moments to the after parts of the Battle of New York, and I love seeing that. You see downstairs, there's Hydra members coming after the battle. It's like, we know they're Hydra now because we have that future knowledge that our present Avengers have, that they are traveling in time with. Like Robert Redford, he reprises his character. The character of Crossbones is there, you know, just other Hydra people. Like people that we know as viewers are bad. But the past Tony, for instance, he doesn't know that yet. He doesn't have that knowledge yet. You have Ant-Man and present Tony giving past Tony a fake heart attack, but in that moment, things don't go as planned, and Loki poofs away with the Tesseract. Like, oops, where the fuck did he go? So that part of the mission failed. But at the same time, you have Captain America versus Old Cap, because he thinks he is Loki in disguise, which kind of breaks that don't see yourself rule, but oh well, they beat the crap out of each other. It's a funny moment because you get, like, things like, I can do this all day, a classic Cap line, but present Cap is like, oh my god, yeah, I know, I say that a lot, and it's like Peggy's picture that throws off the poor past Cap and kind of makes him fail to the present Captain America, if you will. And we, of course, get mentions to Captain America's ass being America's ass because Scott is hilarious, which is so funny that they make fun of the costume from the first Avengers, considering how fans look at it now. Oh, and we get the elevator scene with Steve as well. Steve is in the same place as the viewer for this. He steps into that elevator having the future knowledge that all of these people are Hydra agents. But they don't know that he knows that sort of thing. They don't know he's from the future. And he's just there to try and get the stone. And, you know, he basically just says, like, you know, the director wants me to take that. And instead of, like, a fight scene that they could have done, they could have went that way. Because I think all of us fans were like, oh my god, this is going to be Winter Soldier scene again, right? Like, fighting in the elevator, that badass scene. Nope, no fighting. Instead, Steve says, "Hail Hydra." And I think I lost my shit. First of all, what a great way to fuck those guys over when you, once again, know something that they don't. Use that knowledge to your advantage, make them think that you are a Hydra agent. I also feel like this could have been a nod to that Captain America comic that came out a few years back where they tried to make Steve a Hydra agent. And then in turn, it turned into a meme of Steve saying, "Hail Hydra," and then the meme of Batman saying he shot his parents, Daredevil saying he could see the whole time, and so on. It became a meme because it was so ridiculous. So, obviously for this movie, Steve is not a Hydra agent. He's just smarter than those bad guys in the elevator. But yes, he said Hail Hydra, and I love that moment. What a great way to screw them. So that part of New York was partially successful. They have the scepter, but the Tesseract is gone. So Steve and Tony think they need to go back further for it. But at the same time, we are using those Pym particles and we don't have extra of them. You can only do so many jumps. So I think it's Tony that kind of has the idea of why not go back to a time when they had both. And that time turns out to be a S.H.I.E.L.D. base in the 70s. So Tony and Steve head back in time while Scott is left to return to the present. Meanwhile, Hulk is still in New York as well and is trying to get the time stone from the Ancient One, who is having none of his shit. Like, let me just say, I appreciate all the cameos in this movie from all of the different Marvel movies. Like, the Ancient One coming back, you know, whether it's here on the roof with Hulk, or, you know, like I had said, Robert Redford, there's some other cameos coming up. It just really makes all of these movies seem so connected and cohesive when you have these same actors coming back to play these same parts and to have these cameos. It makes this conclusion piece, like, just so much better to enjoy. So the Ancient One is, like, having none of that and does not want to give him the time stone. And I do like when she kind of, like, pushes Banner out of the Hulk body and is just talking to Bruce for a bit. It's a very neat effect. I need to watch Doctor Strange again. I've literally only seen it once. And the only way she agrees to give up the stone is when he tells her that Doctor Strange gave it away. And so knowing that Doctor Strange had said that this was the only way it could happen, she allows Hulk to take this time stone. And Hulk and or Bruce also agrees to return the stones back at the same place in time so that the timeline isn't fucked over, like, this timeline here doesn't have stones all of a sudden. Like, no, they had to return them in that exact moment. Back to the 70s S.H.I.E.L.D. base, a few different things that I enjoy about these bits. One, we do get to see Howard Stark, and Tony gets to interact with him, which is great. And once again, it is the same actor that we have seen a few different times play Howard Stark. Their conversations are very sweet, like about children and being a father, because Howard mentions that his wife is pregnant, and, she's pregnant with Tony at this point. And Tony is mentioning his daughter that, Howard doesn't know that he's mentioning his granddaughter. I just love sweet moments like that. You can call me a mush, I don't care. I just love moments like that, especially in time travel storylines. My heart also gets to melt further a bit in this time. We have Steve find himself into an office, and on the desk is his picture. So immediately I'm like, oh my god, it's Peggy's office. It's Peggy. Like, I'm a Peggy Carter fan, guys. I love her. I think she's amazing. And then you can see the door and it says Margaret Carter. And Haley Atwell is there to, once again, another great cameo to have her appear. Like, thank you. Always good to see her. And I love Peggy and Steve so much. And this moment with the glass between them, like, tugged at my heart because they have been one of the most tragic Marvel couples in these movies, I feel like. I ship them so much. I love them. And they are just epically tragic. Of course, at this point of the movie, I didn't know how the movie ended yet, so I was seriously taking in the tragic love story that they were, because I didn't know the end of the movie yet. We also get to see a de-aged Pym in his lab, which is great. God, Marvel does so good at the de-aging people with the CGI. It's just, like, so fantastic. Props to them. They're able to distract him and get him out of the lab so they can grab some more Pym particles so that they are able to, once again, travel the rest of the way and get home. Tony does get the Tesseract before walking out with his dad, and Howard heads off to his butler, Jarvis. Of course, this is where Tony got the name for his system, but my big thing was when Jarvis was standing at that car, waiting for Howard. It's the same actor from the TV show Agent Carter, which I loved. I loved Agent Carter so much. Remember, Peggy Carter fan, guys. And I loved that show. And Jarvis was like her partner in crime on that show. So I was so excited to once again in the theater see the same actor back as Jarvis. Just those little touches of cameos and the same people coming back for the same roles. It was amazing. So that is that. Next we are going after the Reality Stone, which is in the ether. For that we have to go to Thor Dark World. Going to that time is Thor and Rocket. At this point, Thor is still kind of doubting himself. He's still feeling, bad about not killing Thanos the first time, and he's very depressed. And Chris Hemsworth also does a really great job at this different version of Thor. I mean, hell, the entire cast is incredible. Like, everyone does so good. There isn't a bad performance in this movie. So we need to get the ether out of Jane, who at the time had traveled to Asgard with Thor. And hell, even Natalie Portman came back for some additional shots for this. That's a bloody miracle. I wasn't sure if she would, but when I saw her at the premiere for this movie, I did wonder if she would have a cameo of some sort in this film. I think the best part of this particular time jump was Thor talking to his mom. And once again, Rene Russo came back to play his mom. So it was just like even more heartfelt because it's the same actress for the same role. I loved her as his mom, and these moments were so sweet and emotional. As fans and Thor, we are once again in the place of knowing more than the people in that time. We know that later that day she dies, which is so sad. And so that's horrible, but at the same time, it's like Thor needed that conversation with his mom. But it's like he knows she's gonna die shortly. I did like that she knew he wasn't like her Thor, like right away, because she's like, I was raised by witches. I loved it. And before they head back, because, Rocket did all the work for this one, Thor was talking to his mom, and he went and got the ether out of Jane and all that fun stuff. But before they leave, Thor reaches out, and, they're waiting, and the hammer comes back to him, because he's still worthy. His depression, PTSD, whatever you want to call it, didn't define him. He was still worthy of that, and I love these moments. Another time jump is for Nebula and War Machine. They are headed back to basically the start of Guardians of the Galaxy. Like music, dancing, and all with Star-Lord there. Now, here was my thing. I get why Nebula went there. She understood the time and the location, but I really had a bad feeling the minute they sent her into that area, and then just like that, the old Nebula started pulling memories from the present one. And in turn, this tipped off Thanos that, he succeeded. He would get the stones, and the Avengers were trying to fuck up his work. It tipped him off. In these time jumps and time travel, we also get Gamora in this movie. She is obviously the old Gamora because the present one died. But you do get to see Gamora in this movie. And considering I really wanted her to be in this movie, I'm glad that we were able to see past version of her. So because of that misstep with the Nebula stuff, and Nebula wanting to prove herself to Thanos, she returns in the place of the present one. Does that make sense? Past Nebula is going back with the Avengers, and the old version is staying to be tortured. Which, is a pretty good plan, take them down from the inside. But at the same time, that gave present Nebula time to bond and team up with the past Gamora and get Gamora's help, and they decide to further try and stop Thanos. And the last mission was for the Soul Stone, and that was with Natasha and Clint. Come on now. We knew that this was not going to be good, right? We knew that this was going to be a shitty moment. We knew what had to happen to get the stone. It's very convenient that they had to go together. Red Skull is there, of course, and, tells them the spiel of, one of you have to die if you want the stone. And I was so conflicted while watching this. I did not want Black Widow to die. If I had to choose, I would prefer her to live. But from a storyline perspective, if they were successful, he does have a family to go home to. So, of course, they are both fighting for it. This was very hard. And like I said, I enjoy their friendship. And seeing them, battle each other to die for each other and for the rest of these people. And, Clint trying to hold on to her and her insisting that he let her go. Oh, my God. And then she falls to her death just like Gamora did. That was hard. And I was not expecting her death. Not at all. And she doesn't come back. I had hope for the end of this movie that they would bring her back, but she stays dead. I don't know why they did that, really. I thought that there was going to be this Black Widow movie coming out, so either it's obviously a prequel, or Scarlett Johansson isn't in it, or they find a different way to bring her back. I'm not sure if Scarlett Johansson was done with the role, because, Widow had already taken, a leadership role for the surviving leaders or the Avengers, and she could have easily been there to help with the next phase of Avengers, grouping together or whatever is going to happen in the next Marvel movies. But nope, she's dead. I really thought they'd find a way to bring her back, but that was just, heartbreaking stuff. Horrible. I don't know what was worse, watching her die or watching Clint's reaction to her dying. Let's see, I'm having a hard time remembering this bit, but it's I know that the group is out on a dock of some kind, of some point, they're kind of mourning Natasha, and Hulk chucks a bench into the water. It's very sad, and there's a mention that she doesn't have anybody. She didn't have family. They were her family. So now that we have the stones, there is a new gauntlet made, and the debate starts of who is going to do the undo snap. Probably my favorite Hulk line in this is in this scene. He mentions that the snap almost killed Thanos, and Thanos is super strong, and that this is mostly Gamma. It's almost as if he was built or made for this. And it has to be him that does the unsnap. He's the only one that can do it. And I just love this. He's at peace with his Hulk side, but even after all these struggles of years, all the things he's faced, it's almost a moment of hell yes, you got this. With all your gamma-ness, you got this, bro. You can do this. You can do the unsnap. Maybe you were made for this. And they kind of mention, in turn, it would kill anyone else that tried. Foreshadow. So the snap happens to bring back the lost people. But not change the last 5 years. That's very important. That was something that Tony, he didn't want his daughter to go anywhere. So the snap is just to bring the lost people back, but don't change the last 5 years. The birds are outside, and Hawkeye gets a call from his wife, showing us that it seems to have worked. If his wife is back, it seems like this has worked. But before anybody can celebrate, like, bam, bam, the building is, like, exploded. Thanos' ship is there, blowing things up. Thanos arrives. People are falling different levels down deep under the structure. People are blown across the room and spaces. It's just like, bam. Underneath all the rubble is Rhodey and Rocket, which Rhodey's, like, iron legs didn't seem to be working, and I was very concerned. Like, his normal legs don't work, so he kind of needs that tech, and it didn't look like it was working, but he does manage to help Rocket a little bit, because they're just, like, they're underneath all this rubble, and, like, there's water filling up. It's, like, just all very intense. That explosion starts a very intense part to this movie, and all of it, there's, like, just so many moments and so many pieces. I'm gonna do my best to try and remember as much as I can. It's just, like, so much to take in, and I've only seen this movie one time, so please bear with me. There's just a lot happening. I believe, like, Hawkeye, like, has the gauntlet and is, like, trying to run away from, like, some Hunger Games looking creatures. Like, they looked like mutts or whatever the thing is that killed a character that I won't ruin in case you haven't seen Hunger Games. And then, like, up top, we kind of have Cap, Tony, and Thor taking on Thanos. In this first portion of a fight, which is, like, massive fight scene on top of fight scene, there's a lot happening, and everyone is taking a beating. Like, you know, there's some harsh stuff going on. And by the way, Thor is still curvy. Thought that was a big deal for everyone. He's still curvy. So, let's see. At one point, Thanos is, like, about to kill Thor, and instead, bam! The damn hammer comes flying out of nowhere and hits him. And this is when it happens, guys. This is when it happens. I freaked the fuck out. I think everybody in the theater was freaking out. I don't know if you guys did. Captain America has Mjolnir and is worthy of it. I think everyone has been waiting for this moment since Ultron, when the damn thing wiggled on the table. Like, when Steve tried to pick it up, and Thor totally noticed it in that scene. So, of course, Thor screams. He's like, I knew it! I love that we got to see Steve using the hammer and being worthy of it. It's just, like, such an epic moment. I love it. It's one of my favorites. So, God, there's just, like, so much happening. Like, the fight continues. Cap's shield breaks at one point. He's kind of only holding, like, pieces of it up. I'm sorry if I'm leaving things out. I'm just trying to do this from memory. There are holes opening up for, like, Thanos' army to invade Earth. We have, like, armies, like, massive amounts of, like, weapons and ships and freaking people and creatures, and, like, New York was nothing compared to what was invading Earth in this. It continues on with Cap fighting Thanos, and can I just say that this entire end battle, I was waiting for Thanos to kill Steve. Like, I thought Steve was gonna die in this. Everyone said he was gonna die, everyone was expecting him to die, and yet, that did not happen. So, every moment that Captain America is fighting Thanos, I was like, oh my god, my anxiety, it's happening, he's gonna die, and then it didn't. But then it happens, guys. Steve's comm starts to kind of go staticky, and you hear Sam say, Cap, you read me? On your left. Yes! Yes! This is another part that I was, like, clapping in the theater. I was so excited. So, I love Sam, aka Falcon. So, yes, hearing his voice, hearing him say, on your left, the people are back. On your left, of course, referencing back to Winter Soldier, when their friendship was introduced when they first met. And just like that, we have different portals opening up, like Doctor Strange-looking portals, if you will. And the people that poofed away in the last movie are back. We have the Wakanda people coming through. You know, Black Panther, Okoye, Shuri. The Guardians crew is back. Doctor Strange, Falcon, of course. Spider-Man is back. Wasp, Scarlet Witch. It's just like all the people that we saw disappear are back and ready for this epic fucking battle. I do know that Captain Marvel shows up at some point in this end battle. I don't remember when, though. It was so much to take in. But she's, like, attacking Thanos and, you know, which is always helpful, but I don't exactly know when she came back in this epic battle, so I'm sorry, but the whole time I was watching her individual movie, I wanted to see what she would be like against Thanos, just because she's so strong compared to, like, some of these other people. It's, like, incredible to me, but also in these moments, you know, Ant-Man did save Rhodey and Rocket by making himself huge and busting out of the wreckage of the Avengers headquarters. And after kind of everyone is arrived, if you will, like all of the groups of the good guys, the good guys are here. And we get to see Steve saying, "Avengers, assemble." If that is not a freaking epic moment in comic movie history, I don't know what is, because you have so many characters that we love. There are so many of my favorite characters in the same shots fighting the same battle. It's like not like anything we've ever seen before. I thought the first Avengers movie was intense and cool when you had that group of people fighting together. And now to compare it to this one, this is just such a massive battle with all of our favorite people. It's so intense. You even get like Wakanda's army coming through as well. It's like everyone bought their reinforcements. Everyone is there to kick ass. It's just like so much happening. I like really want to see this battle again. Like I want to see the whole movie again, but it's like there was so much happening in this battle. I need to see it again and take it in. It's just like so much. So let's see. At one point, Captain Marvel is going for like the gauntlet and like she's trying to keep it away from Thanos. Like he gets it and like I thought she was gonna rip his damn hand off. But like for a bit, we were like honestly kind of playing hot potato with the damn stones. We were tossing it to different heroes. Like Spider-Man is like swinging around with it, and Spider-Man. Tony and Peter's reunion when he came back. All the hug, the feelings. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. They are so cute. Break my heart a bit. What else? We have, like, other people showing up. Pepper shows up in the suit. Yes! Like, I'm a Pepper Potts fan, and she's in the damn suit! And, like, Tony had, like, said to Morgan, like, your mom, like, never, like, uses the things I give her or make her or whatever, and she shows up in the suit. Yes! Like, everybody is there to fight. It's so good. There's another part that I just got so hyped for in the theater when I saw her show up in that suit. It's just so awesome. So we also have Peter passing the gauntlet to Captain Marvel, and they are debating how to get her through the battlefield, basically. And all the women come up behind her and, like, basically, like, say, like, I don't know what they say, like, something effective, like, they got her, or whatever the hell they say. And I've heard some people be very critical of this scene, but I fucking loved it. It was badass. I love all these amazing female characters coming up into one shot, like, to help her get through that area. It was a badass moment for me. I loved it. Haters be damned. And more continues to happen. I don't even know. So, like, Thanos has the gauntlet, and he thinks he has won. He says something like, "I am inevitable," or some cocky thing like that, right? And tries to snap. But just like that, the stones are gone, and instead, they are on Iron Man's hand. And Tony's response? "I am Iron Man." And it goes right back to the damn first movie that started this all. There are so many nostalgia moments, so many throwbacks for the fans in this movie, and Tony snaps his hand with the stones. I gotta be honest, I knew in that moment my heart dropped. We had already had it hinted that Hulk was the only one strong enough for the snap, and that it had hurt him pretty bad. He was able to bring people back, but he couldn't also bring Natasha back, sadly. But it took a lot out of him, so when Tony snapped, I knew he was done. All of Thanos' army poofs away, including himself, like, bye bitch. But they won. But all of this, in turn, kills Tony. We all knew that it was a possibility, but damn did it hurt. And they, of course, had to rip our damn hearts out with Peter coming up and, like, "Mr. Stark, we won. Mr. Stark, oh, Jesus, stop. Kid, you're breaking my heart." I didn't bring enough tissues to this damn movie, and it gets even worse. Like, Pepper steps in and is talking to Tony, and, like, oh my god, I love Pepper and Tony so much, so that just hurt as well. And she, like, basically tells him, like, they're gonna be okay, like, they, like, won, he can let go or whatever, and he doesn't really say anything, because he's, like, gone. He's, like, just mentally gone. It took too much out of him, and so he kind of just dies. He just can, like, let go. He did what he needed to do. This was apparently the one way that Doctor Strange had seen them winning. Tony dies. Tony dies a true hero. And they gave us a funeral. Oh, the tears. First we do see a family moment with Pepper and Happy and Morgan and, all of watching a recording from Tony before he died. And that's just really hard. And we get the "Love You 3000 once more. Which I heard that's might, like, be the total runtime of the Marvel movies. I don't know if that's accurate or if that's bullshit, but heard some people saying that. So then we do get the funeral where every freaking body is there for Tony's funeral. It goes past all these different groups of people that are in attendance, and Apparently everyone was there on set that day. Like, these shots weren't done separately. Like, everyone was there. I mean, it even's, like, small, like, you know, Hank Pym and Janet are there with Hope. I mean, just, like, everyone came to his funeral from these past movies. Even the kid from Iron Man 3 was there. It was just a beautiful but sad moment and a really amazing way to conclude this portion of the Marvel movies, and it was done so well. On a funnier note, I just watched this interview with Tom Holland, aka Peter Parker, and I guess because he was so bad with spoilers, they told him they were filming a wedding. So he didn't know why everyone was so sad, and he was like, where's Robert at? Where's Robert Downey Jr.? Why isn't he in this shot? And to warm our hearts, we do get a moment with Morgan Stark and Happy, where she wanted a cheeseburger. Once more tying right back to the first Iron Man movie, and he tells her that her dad liked cheeseburgers, and I'll get you all the cheeseburgers you want. My heart, ah! I do hear originally they were going to have Tony see a grown-up version of Morgan before he died, like kind of like saying it was okay for what he did and everything, but that was cut from the film. They thought it would be too confusing. So I wonder if we will see like a baby Stark in the future movies, like as a kid or as she grows up. I'm always down for kind of like the next generation family stuff, if you will. Okay, what else do we have to close out this movie? Thor basically gives Asgard to Valkyrie and joins the Guardians of the Galaxy. So I'm curious if he will be in the future Guardian movies. Oh, and jumping back a little bit, Star-Lord did see past Gamora, and of course she like hit him. Typical. Nebula does have a great line about how it was either him or a tree when Gamora isn't happy that Star-Lord was her pick. So if we want Gamora back, I think we just gotta steal the old one, because the present one is sadly dead. I don't think there's any fixing that, but we could just steal the old one for future movies. Clint goes home, of course. Black Widow remains dead. I'm still so surprised by this. I expected to lose Steve and Tony, not so much Natasha. So Steve is going to be the one that returns the stones to the exact time that they took them, like Hulk had promised, the Ancient One. So he's talking to Sam and Bucky, and basically it will be a moment for them, but Steve can take however long he wants, and he took that quite literally. And when he doesn't come back immediately, they kind of wonder what's going on. Is he lost? I wondered if he was just going to be lost in time and we wouldn't know. But Bucky notices someone sitting by a chair, and when they get closer, it's freaking old Steve Rogers. Like, he's an old man. He stayed back in time and grew old. And it's just like, oh my god, the feels. Like, oh my god, so many emotions. He lived his life. Old Steve, like, turns over the shield to Sam and basically makes him the new Captain America. And when you think about it, Sam really is a perfect fit for it. He's been by Steve's side through this whole time. He's got the military background. He's just, like, perfect for it. He's a good symbol for Captain America. I know a lot of people expected it to be Bucky, and I did too. But Bucky does have some baggage that comes along with him. So I'm good with Sam being the new Cap. And of course, he noticed the damn wedding ring. I'm sure you guys did too on Steve's finger. And Sam asks about her, and Steve decides to keep it to himself. So this movie ends showing us back in time, 40s, 50s, something like that, right? Old school music playing as it zooms into a house where Steve and Peggy are dancing. My heart burst. I love them, but they have always been the tragic couple that didn't get to be together. But he fixed that. He got to go back and be with Peggy and get that damn dance finally. My fangirl heartship burst. But it was also confused with this film. I get the happy ending for Peggy and Steve finally that I love so much, but I also lost Tony and Pepper. So it's like good and bad moments for the feels. So what did I think of this movie? I loved it. So well done. It's amazing. I do feel like the build-up made it feel kind of like separate movies in one film. I mean, kind of like how Jaws feels like separate movies. You have kind of the opening bit 1, you have time travel section 2, and then the end battle 3. They all work together, but they seem like something more than just different acts to one film because they are so massive in their own right, if that makes sense. But I guess that's why the movie needed to be 3 hours long. This movie was definitely made for fans. There were so many callbacks to the previous films and TV shows. They did a really good job with concluding this portion of the Marvel phase and pleasing the fans, in my opinion. I mean, I'm pleased, and I've seen many of my friends that are fans be pleased with this movie. Okay, so to close out this podcast, I did ask you guys to send in questions if you had any for, Avengers Endgame topic. Apparently I didn't think this was going to be long enough of a podcast, but, oh well. So let's see what your guys' questions are. So Nick sent in, favorite moment and character in Endgame. So in a general sense, I'd say my favorite character is Steve. He's been a favorite of mine for a while, but I have to say it in a general sense because there are so many characters in this movie that I love for different reasons. So I could list many, many different favorite characters because it's just like overwhelming how many people I love. As for a moment, I'd say maybe it's tied between when Steve, had the damn hammer and was worthy and saved Thor, or, when everyone comes back, on your left, and like the portals are opening and the whole army is there. Just like such epic moments. And then there are also smaller moments during the time travel bits that are just like favorites as well that I loved. And the opening bit with Scott's parts I love. And I do have to say I really love that they made Steve say Hail Hydra to confuse the elevator peeps. I thought that was epic. Brian sent in a few. I know he's a hardcore fan, so I'm going to try and give my opinion on some of these questions here, Brian. What are the ramifications of there now being a multiverse? I think we will for sure see that now in future material because, that's just what they've done. It could be a very exciting thing to see how they incorporate, the multiverse. I think they're gonna start it in the new Spider-Man movie, I think. We're already jumping right into it. But at the same time, once you start messing with, multiverses and stuff like that, some things can get a bit confusing or screwed up, in their own timelines. But they do have to acknowledge it now. What is the status of the Eye of Agamotto now that the Time Stone has been decimated to an atomic level? Ant-Man, Doctor Strange movie, ? Okay, so this is totally a Doctor Strange question. Dude, I have no idea. So I've only seen Doctor Strange once. I'm assuming that's the necklace thing that the Time Stone is in. I need to watch it again. I'm so sorry. But with all the changes that this movie added, I think maybe anything is possible, future movie-wise and storyline-wise. I think anything is possible. Will there be a new Avengers or West Coast Avengers A-Force movie after this? I'd say that they are definitely going to do something. I'm not sure which route they will go, but I feel like they will build up once again and create kind of a new team with a new phase. I mean, hell, I've even heard talk about the kids Avengers type of thing, with Cassie Lang, Morgan Starr, Lila Barton. There's different kids that could form a team, if they kind of jump ahead or whatnot, Hell, are there any Rogers kids or grandkids running around in one of the timelines, one of the universes? Anybody? I would be down for that. Peggy plus Steve would make some really badass kids. Next question. As Guardians of the Galaxy is going to be about tracking down 2014 Gamora, right? I sure hope so. I love Gamora and Zoe Saldana, so I would love to see her back in the Guardians movies. So that would be a great, bit to the first movie back or whatever, getting her or finding her, convincing her to be part of the team again, because, she doesn't have memories of them. Will Sam Wilson / Winter Soldier show tie into another movie? Will we get Old Man Cap? Was he the one that Peggy was talking about all along in that film reel from Captain America Winter Soldier? Oh my god, I'm so glad you asked this question, because I thought the same thing. Okay, so first off, Sam and Bucky show. I feel like it could maybe connect to another movie, but at the same time, it will probably be the Agent Carter or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. shows where it is in the universe and it is connected, but it's not you have to watch it for the rest of the movies to make sense. I'd love to see Old Man Cap in that show, but if I'm honest, they'd probably break us and start that show off with Steve's freaking funeral. Now, the Peggy video from 1951, which was the Smithsonian interview that they had in Winter Soldier, was he the one that Peggy was talking about all along in the film reel from Captain America Winter Soldier? So I was thinking about this just the other night, and it's kind of like a time travel question. So did Peggy lose Steve and not have him come back? Or is the man that she's talking about that she married, is that Steve that came back? Because there's two Steves. Also confusing, but I was thinking about that interview. So I actually found like a quote. They asked like the screenwriters. So it says, 2014's Captain America the Winter Soldier established that Peggy had a husband and 2 kids, and some fans have theorized that Steve Rogers secretly was the husband all along. Others have stated that Steve created an alternate timeline when he went back to live with Peggy, and somehow got back to the main line MCU as an old man. Marcus and McFleely, I'm sorry if I said that wrong, accept that different people will have different viewpoints on the topic, but in their minds, Steve was Peggy's husband all along. It was always our intention that he was the father of those 2 children, but again, there are time travel loopholes for that. It does introduce the idea that there are 2 children who have somewhat super soldier DNA. Super soldier DNA plus Peggy DNA. I'm just saying that's going to be a badass kid right there. So is it just like an alternate timeline where Steve and Peggy marry? And the main line has her married to someone else? Like, it's like choices. I guess it's like personal preference on what you want to believe. If she was always married to Steve in that time, in that, like, clip, or if it is a different timeline that he was living in, and then he came back to the main one. Next question. Where did 2012 Loki portal the fuck off to? What a great question. I actually have a theory that Loki, 2012 Loki, will be the one starring in the Loki TV show that Disney is making. Just a thought. Next question. Now that the Guardians have met the Avengers and the ship was on Earth, does that mean Quill might be making some more Earthbound stops in the future? I would say yes. They've introduced all of these characters together, so I think in the future movies, everyone could easily cameo in each other's films, just like they've done with the past stuff. So Quill could easily go back to Earth from time to time. Did he stick around enough to get some new music, tech, etc.? Maybe tech or something, but music, come on. Can you imagine Star-Lord listening to our modern music? He would be appalled. Also, shouldn't that have been a bit of a bigger deal that he was back on Earth for the first time since his mother passed / he got abducted? Yes. Probably should have been a bit more of a big deal, but there was just so much to fit in this movie and cover. Like, there wasn't space for it. I think it's very possible that we will see the aftermath of that, of going back to Earth, of all of that, and how he handles it in the next Guardians movie. All right, next question is sent in from Christopher. Would you ever want to see a Marvel Star Wars crossover or just keep them separated? I'm in the mindset that I would like to keep them separated. It doesn't really make sense to me with Marvel having so many pop culture references so often. And then, just to merge them where Rey shows up and is like, hi, Star-Lord, or something like that. I don't know. I just watched a fan video the other day of them. Actually, I've been watching a lot of crossover videos, so... A lot of people like to edit together Star Wars and Marvel people, but I don't think I'd want to see that in a movie. Let's see, Ray sent in, how did you feel when all the characters that died in Infinity War came back? So I loved it. It's one of my favorite parts of the movie. We didn't get Vision back. He stayed dead. The present Loki also stayed dead, and Gamora. And now Black Widow and Tony. But the main people that poofed away, they came back, and I loved that moment. Jeff sent in, is Captain Marvel still alive after the fight with Thanos? Yeah. Yes, she is. Did I miss something that suggested she wasn't? Like, she was at Tony's funeral. So I'm going to say yes. She's pretty strong, that one. Another question sent in. With Thanos dead, what's going to motivate Drax to keep going on? I'd say he will stay with his new family. Like, the Guardians are what he cares about now. Like, they've become his family, and that's what he'll stick to. He might just not need the anger or hurt as motivation for him anymore, if that makes sense. Let's see, Ryan sent in, Tony used the stones knowing it might kill him to do so, and he knew the stones were powerful enough to destroy themselves. Could he have thought, while snapping, Thanos and his army vanish forever and I don't die? He could have, but... just like the Hulk, Bruce couldn't bring back Natasha with his snap either. Whether that be lack of power or strength, or maybe it's like you only get one wish per snap, like a genie bottle or something. And it could have just been too much for Tony as well. He had one thing to really push for, and that was ending that war, like ending Thanos. So honestly, make sure, I live... probably wasn't on his mind. It was more focused on save everybody else, kind of going back to the whole dying a hero thing. Another question. Also, they said it was impossible to change the present by changing the past, but didn't Cap change the present by leaving it and living in the past? He changed it from present when he was young to one in which he was old. Seems like there should be two Steves. I feel like that's where we're going to jump into like the multiple timelines here, the multiverse or whatnot. And maybe in like the alternate one he created, the other Steve would have been like still chilling in the ice. So technically there would be two, but he was the only one that was around. And then he like returned to the main timeline as an old man. Let's see. Dana sent in, which do you feel was better, Infinity War or Endgame? That's tough because I really liked Infinity War, but I'm going to say Endgame just because there was so much and I think they handled it so well. So many characters, great conclusion, tiebacks, the moments. It was just really well done. Jacob sent in, why couldn't they use the Time Stone to bring Black Widow or Gamora back? So I feel like if they would have used the Time Stone to change those events, at the same time they risk losing a different way, like screwing up what they had won, if that makes sense. Like, I mean, it's sad, but like that's kind of how my mind like accepts that they couldn't go back and save them, because if they did that, then they could lose a different way. And what is next for Marvel? As a Spider-Man fanboy, I hope he is the new face of MCU. Spider-Man could be the next main dude, you know? I mean, he's going to be the first movie after the snap. He's going to, like, kind of set the course for the rest of them, I feel like. We are far from the end of the Marvel movies, that's for sure. But I think that they're going to start to build a new team, for sure. And as people have said for a long time, I think that Tony could very well be this Peter Parker's Uncle Ben. I think that could definitely be kind of his story arc for that. All right, guys, I think that is all the questions. Thank you for listening to me ramble about the Avengers Endgame and Marvel in general. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will catch you in the next Chit Chat with Cass.